Welcome to another episode of Patio Pondering. We're coming to you from the Annex patio because it's rainy outside on the patio. Although no, it's not warm enough. We can't do it out there. I have with me an uber special guest, and when I invited this person, the text I got back was in all caps and had exclamation points. So I was like, oh, goody, this is going to be a fun one. I have sitting with me in the Annex patio for this edition of the Patio Ponderings podcast, Miss Amber Hoopengardner from Fort Wayne, Churubusco, Indiana.
Hey, Jimmy. How are you today?
I am awesome. This is a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
A little rainy, but not too bad.
Yeah, well, it's spring. That's what happens. And May the 4th be with you.
Oh, my goodness. Cinco de Mayo's tomorrow.
Ooh. I'll have to enjoy from the sidelines because... yeah, me and Tequila never got along.
I'm in it for the tacos.
The tacos. There you go. We won't go there. Amber, welcome. Thank you for coming over to the patio. And as we talk in most of our podcasts, we need to learn a little bit about you. And we want to find some obscure little nuggets about you that make you resilient, that make you successful in what you've done so far in your career and your life. You're quarter century into your life-ish, so sort of. I'm not going to tell you your age, but it's closer to 25 than 50, let's say that.
Yes. Well, I hail from the small little town of Churubusco, Indiana, Old Turtle Town. I went to Carroll High School. When I was in Carroll High School, or I guess before Carroll, before I started touching on like FFA, I had jumped into 4-H when I think it was actually like the summer before I could even start doing 4-H. We had randomly been at a swap meet just where my dad used to buy his tools and guns.
Wolf Lake?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Came across the first animal I ever had, and it was a rabbit that I got from Cheryl Smith. And,
at Wolf Lake?
Yep. And I had come across her, bought this rabbit, didn't even know who she was. Ended up getting this rabbit. Somehow down the road, we ended up signing up for 4-H. Next thing I knew, I had my fair folk group, which was the Smith family into Bolts and Chapies and Bushings, and I think we ended up getting close to like 9 families back in the day. Started doing that, had the pigs and sheep, and outside of 4-H, I'd always been in love with horses. I showed horses for almost 15 years. And then, as soon as I got into FFA, I have never been known for being quiet. Never been a small talker at all. Always talk a lot and always talk loud, and FFA did me well there. My senior year of college, I actually flipped a quarter to decide what college I was going to go to. Because of your daughter, I had applied to K-State, and I got into K-State and I got into Purdue, and I flipped a quarter to figure out which one I wanted to go to. Knew I wanted to kind of stay close to home, but that quarter landed on Purdue, and next thing I knew, I was a Boilermaker. So went to Purdue, graduated there actually in 3 years with a bachelor's in agribusiness. I actually had a minor in animal sciences where I kind of focused on meat sciences, and I absolutely fell in love with like the butcher block side of things. We did livestock judging. Shelby and I had done it when we were in high school, and that was always cool, like seeing the animals and stuff, but you never got to see the other side of it from the butcher block side. And when we got to go to college and actually judge animals, but then we judged them on Tuesday, they were harvested Wednesday, and then we got to see them hanging on Thursday. That may be one of my coolest experiences because your coach tells you what you're supposed to look at, but you don't know what you're supposed to look at until you're looking at it.
Yeah.
It's wild. So I've always had like a love for the ag industry. It was something that I wasn't really born into. Like my grandpa, he was really big into seed sales, and then he had a crop insurance business, but that was never like reflected, or I even want to say like forced on me as a kid or brought around me. I think I kind of actually promoted my own like ag, I don't know, atmosphere, and I just kept going, and I'm very fortunate that I have a mom and dad. I don't want to say I was spoiled, but they definitely didn't tell me no on a lot of different things. So I brought home a lot of different animals that my dad should have probably said no to, but instead he's like, well, I guess we got to get another pen set up, don't we?
I wouldn't call you spoiled. I'd call you privileged.
Yes, I would call it privilege. That's a good word for it. But I was really fortunate for all of that when I actually, all through college, all of my internships were in the crop side of the industry. I don't know if you knew this, but I actually wanted to go to school and do like swine nutrition. It was like my goal outside of college. And then when I got to college and I realized I had to take organic chemistry, that was a hard pass, let me tell you. Fell in love with like the ag business side. Thought I would be really good at sales just because I can talk. Newsflash, that is not how that works. I ended up doing a crop scouting internship with Ag Plus. I did crop scouting, and then I did soil sampling with Greg Knibler, which I learned a lot from both of those. I like to say that Greg is somebody that if you can get him to sit down in a chair and talk to you, you can learn so much information from him. Absolutely enjoyed my time there. Then after college, ended up doing, I had a plant nutrient like trainee position at the Andersons. Learned a lot there. After that, I ended up losing my job at the Andersons. Ended up completely going outside of the ag industry. I think with the way that I ended up kind of transitioning things, I ended up getting a job outside of the ag industry. Fell into kind of a marketing position, which was really cool to do. It was for a tour bus company. Learned a lot of different things. I like to say that you sometimes fall into a position where you learn that, you know what, this isn't what I wanted. I'm glad I checked that off my box. Did that, and now I am working at Howard Daily Financial, where I'm a client service specialist that helps with retirement planning. Never in a million years. If you would have talked to Amber 10 years ago and said this is where you're at, wouldn't have thought it. Absolutely love where I am. It's given me an opportunity to travel as much as I have. Figured out that I absolutely love hiking. Love to go paddleboarding and kayaking down just random rivers and creeks. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with my life.
So in your almost 25 years on this earth, you have had a lot of experiences.
Yes.
And I would say that looking at your mom and your aunt, I would not call them farm women.
Nope, not at all.
You don't look at them or have conversations with them and you think, she grew up on a farm. So you've been able to take the experience that you got, the exposure from your grandfather, which is very similar to what I had with my grandparents, and you turn that into a love of agriculture. So can you think back to, is there anything that, memories or things that you share with your grandfather that, man, I think about that all the time, or that helped me become instilled in ag and want to be an FFA and 4-H?
I would actually say that my grandpa didn't really influence me, in terms of 4-H or FFA. It was one of those deals that I absolutely loved being. I remember like when I was a kindergartner and you had like dress up as your career day. I was dressed up as a farmer.
Oh, geez.
Yes. And like in my little picture, that's what I was. Like I had always just loved, ever since I was really little, the idea of farming, the idea of agriculture was absolutely fascinating to me. I didn't really realize that my grandpa was as involved in agriculture as he was because my grandparents didn't farm. But like, I guess his parents, they did have like a farm, but grandpa himself did not farm. But he sold seed and did crop insurance. So I didn't understand any of that because I never had an interest in the crop side of agriculture until I'm going to be honest, like I was offered an internship my freshman year after, it was after the career fair at Purdue. So the Ag Plus laid it in front of me. I'm like, oh, why not? It's in Busco.
We get to stay at home.
Yeah. I was like, cool, I can do that. Like, let's do it. And then that's what actually sparked it. But it was the summer of 2019 when I'm pretty sure like all Northeast Indiana was under like 10 foot of water all summer. Yeah, so it was quite the interesting crop.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know.
And it was pre-drones, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was boots on the ground running through the water.
That is really funny because your exposure to agronomy is similar to what Shelby was. She worked for Greg, and she turned tail and ran and says, I don't want to do this.
I enjoyed it. I will say, like, the grain side of it is not for the weak.
No.
Like, I didn't understand, like, people don't understand, like, how hard farmers actually work, and I didn't even realize the stereotype that people had of agriculture and farmers until I am completely outside of it with my job. And there are things that coworkers will say at Howard Bailey Financial, that they don't understand that, like, coworkers just, in the spring, or not coworkers, but farmers can't just, like, take the weekend off. Like, that's not how that works. I'll never forget, my first planting season at the Andersons, when they were like, hey, we've got a lot done this week. We're going to let you guys have a couple hours off on Mother's Day because, we still had stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those, like, I was young, dumb, and I think I was 21 still at the time. And I'm like, what do you mean I don't get to spend the whole day with my mom? I had never grown up with farming. I didn't completely understand that. You always see the tractors run, but you don't understand the fact that those guys are out there all night long. And they're out there all day, and no matter the holiday, that's where they're at. Like, family traditions and holidays aren't a thing when seed needs to get in the ground.
So here's a little funny story. When Kim and I decided to get married, she said, oh, I want to get married in October. And I said, you can't do that. She goes, why not? I said, it's harvest season. And her comment was, who cares about harvest? We're not farmers. What are you doing now?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's actually funny that you bring that up, the whole, like, getting married in October, because that's when my wedding's going to be. So, if this tells you how much I had pushed on, like, my own ag, I guess, atmosphere, like, what I wanted it to be. Like, I had a picture of what I wanted it to be, and I was doing everything I possibly could as a young kid to make it happen. But I grew up where when you talked about October, the first thing that came to mind was hunting season.
Mm-hmm.
It was not harvest. It was hunting season needed to get done, and that was, like, when we decided on our wedding, because my fiance would not get married in August because he would sweat too much and get too hot.
Oh, we don't want to see that.
Yeah, no.
No pitting out.
He's not going to do that. That was the first thing they always thought of was hunting season, and so I always felt like, too, I was kind of torn in between two different, like, all through high school and college, I was torn between two different worlds where it was, like, hunting and farming. And there was a farmer up in Waterloo had once said, I heard him say this, he goes, you can never be a good farmer and you can never be a good hunter all in one person. He's like, because all the important things fall at the same time. So.
Well, there's a way around that.
A little bit, yeah.
I would never have a shotgun in the combine and harvest. I never would.
No. But that was just like, if that shows you how I kind of grew up a little bit in my background of, I didn't really have any of those ag influences. Like, I went and I was seeking those out the best I could myself. Like, when you think October in my house growing up, you thought of, like, you were thinking of hunting season. It had nothing to do with farming. So
you were exposed to the romanticism of farming.
Yes.
And the nuts and bolts of October is harvest and May is planting. It should be April, but it's Indiana. Those are things that we don't think about. And as you brought up with your coworkers, it doesn't register. You don't think, oh yeah, that crop got planted. And you're like, oh, I just did it. And it's not 9 to 5. And we were working on a planter today, and one of our mutual friends and we were lamenting the thank a farmer. And we've got this people saying, oh, I'm working so hard. And he's sitting there in the 360 acre field with his auto steer, Snapchatting, like, okay, you're not working hard. So it's not working hard in my grandfather's youth where everything is by hand. But the farming, regardless of whether you're doing crops or livestock, part of the farming hardness that I think we forget about, and I think you've been exposed to it in your job, is the mental fatigue. And the mental fatigue comes from, oh, I don't have my planter ready. Oh, the cost of the planter parts is too high. Crops aren't high enough. I'm behind. I'm ahead. There's so many things that a farmer does that is a mental fatigue that adds to the timelines 100%. That we don't see.
I totally agree. There's so much, people just think that these guys jump in their tractors and go and that things are ready and it's easy. Like, they park it the last year and this year it's ready to go, and that's not how it works. And I had just like the eye-opening experience seeing like it I was completely coming in from the outside. And again, I wasn't even doing the farming myself. I was either helping with the crop scouting or the soil sampling, or I was, working at the fertilizer plant. And you would see that these guys, they're almost planning like a year in advance for things. And like, it kind of cracks me up because I actually had this conversation the other day, working on the retirement like side of things. We had a farmer come in and when the advisor had left his meeting, the advisor was almost in shock at how well this farmer had, had stuff built up for his retirement, had kind of almost a business plan for everything, like retirement-wise, and the way that this farmer could keep up with everything, because farmers kind of have a little bit of a like people from the outside don't realize how much planning goes into it, how much they think things through, and that some of the smartest businessmen I know are farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of shocking that people don't realize that there's that much that goes into it. And like when I jumped into it at a fertilizer plant that was short-staffed. So we had to make sure that we were absolutely doing everything, and we covered kind of a large ground. And I mean, they had a lot of equipment, but it was just like kind of a lack of drivers that had their CDLs or a lack of people that had their custom applicator license, and trying to make sure that you had everything covered. So we were, what some might say, run around like an organized chickens with their head cut off situation. But it was just really cool, and it makes you kind of appreciate the ag industry. And I just never had that, like, I don't know, never pulled that curtain back and saw through and learned everything.
Well, I think there's another part that you're going to be exposed to with Howard Bailey, and maybe talking with some of your advisors as they work with more farmers, is it's low profit, and we go through a shitload of money.
Yes.
And I think that is something that the average person doesn't understand. And I try and share this on my Facebook with some of my aunts and uncles that grew up on the farm, kind of have an idea. There's 4 pallets of seed in our barn, $36,000.
Yeah.
On 4 pallets, 4 pieces that aren't even as big as a quart of wood.
Mm-hmm.
The volume of money that we go through just boggles my mind. As you start to think about it, when we do our taxes, we went through more money than people pay for their houses.
Oh, 100%.
It's crazy. Not only is it a lot of time, a lot of hours, but it adds to the anxiety.
I agree. I was actually, because I wasn't trying to like go and script for your last 5 questions that you asked at the end of this, but I was actually listening to Micah Malcolm's podcast with you, and it made me kind of have my wheels start to turn a little bit. And what was really funny was I had listened to his, and then about a couple days after that, not to like mess with any compliance things on Howard Bailey's side, so I won't go real in detail on it.
For my listeners, any recommendations on here are not recommendations. They're simply the opinion of the host and the guest.
No, so the situation that had happened was we had somebody come in and write a personal check for over $1 million. And I was handed a personal check. And I'm not talking like, you get that farm check that's wrote out that's like, about as, you could fit 3 of them on an 11 and, 8.5 sheet of paper. I'm talking like the small little personal check that your mom grew up carrying in her purse. Okay? I get handed this over $1 million check. And I mean, I'm not going to say like whether it's a penny or $1 million, it still scares you when it's some part of somebody's retirement. But they handed that to me. I walked back there. I was obviously a little nervous, went through my lines of how I needed to get it put where it needed to be put. And somebody had asked me, they're like, have you ever had that much money in your hand? And I'm like, I worked at a fertilizer plant. That was my response because, what's really cool about that is the people that I work with, they don't understand what farmers spend. They don't understand what farmers go through. I mean, all of these people, the majority of them live out on the southwest side of town, and like, they don't understand it at all. And so I had told them, I'm like, oh yeah, like this check right here. I was like, that would buy one farm's fertilizer like for a year, depending on what the size of the farm and things like that. And these guys are like, oh, well, they have to farm like, probably 100,000 acres to spend that kind of money. I'm like, not really. No. I was like, you don't have to be that big to spend that much on fertilizer or even seed or whatever it might be. And it was kind of funny watching these people's light bulbs come off. And that was like, it was kind of a fun conversation starter, because then I got to talk about like what I've seen or like what I did when I worked at the plant, or, did whatever I did in agriculture, or even what I learned down at Purdue. It was really cool to have that conversation, because people like genuinely don't realize that much money comes in and out of a farm. They don't understand. And if they do think that happens, they think it's the biggest farm they think it's somebody that's farming 50,000 acres and they're all driving brand new trucks. And it's like, you want to know what? Some of these smaller farms do spend just as much. It's not as flashy, is what I might say.
Yeah, I got 3 boxes from Shoop, and they were $1,200.
Yep.
It's the way it is. I'm not complaining. It's just the way it is. So as you've been talking, Amber, and I've watched you since before you could drive, so that kind of. There's one thing that I've wanted to chat with you and Shelby also. And this came from the podcast I did with Tara Dinas, Tara Oliver, to those of us in Allen County 4-H. And I was taken aback. What do you think I was taken aback by?
I'm going to be honest. I didn't think I listened to that one. You're going to have to loop me in.
Her experience in 2010, being asked if it was okay if she was the only woman in an office. I'll be 54 in a month and a half, okay? So I'm solid, middle-aged, Gen X, white man. Okay? But I don't view you, obviously you're a friend, but I don't view you as, oh, she's a woman in ag. It's just Amber. And when I would stop by Anderson's or CGB and chat with you, you're just another person.
Yep.
I ordered parts. I had to go up to Archibald the other day. It was Sydney and parts. Threw it out her, the parts manager up at Plevna in Auburn. It's a woman. So I call and talk to her. Maybe I'm getting used to it. So what is your experience in 4-H FFA over the last 15 years and then transitioning into a professional in agriculture as being female?
So I never, like when I look at my 4-H and FFA experience, I never had a situation that I felt like I had any sort of different standing just because I was a girl or a woman. I think, and I'm a very confident person. People that know me, like, I've never been told I was quiet. Confidence I've never had a lack of that. Let's just say that.
Yeah, but there's confident women that have been treated like shit too.
Yes. No, I'll agree with that. But like what I mean by confident is I will walk in a room and if I feel like I'm being looked at sideways just because I might be a woman or whatever, that's never bothered me and I've never picked up on it. So those things may have happened, but I never noticed them until my first internship out of college. I went to a farm. Did my crop scouting, and per my notes, I was supposed to talk to the farmer before I left. Went in to talk, and he flat out asked me if I was single. Now, I'm talking like a man that's probably in his late 50s, asking me, I think I was 19 at the time, if I was single. That caught me off guard. Mm-hmm. But then I figured out he wasn't asking for me. He was asking for his son. Mind you, his son was probably in his late 20s. So, again, I am kind of a little bit of a spitfire, too. And I shot right back. I'm like, well, what do you mean you're asking for him? He goes, well, he'd like a little pretty girl like you. And so I straight up, like, because I'm like, you know what? If you're going to put me in this situation, I am not scared to turn this back around on you. I said, so how many acres you got? And he kind of looked at me, and he spit out whatever number it was. And I was like, oh, well, and I named whoever his neighbor was. Well, they've got this much, and he set that offer in front of me last week. And I kind of turned it back around on him, because I'm like, if you're going to go and try to, like, this isn't The Bachelorette. Like, let's be honest. This is not Amber wants a husband or Amber wants a farmer. Like, that's not what this is. And at the time, I was, like, in a 3-year relationship, so that was just absurd. But I did run into it a lot, and I think also back in, the 2019 days, that was at the tail end of, like, the Miss Me jeans being a thing. And so I would get comments about my Miss Me jean, which clearly meant you were looking at the butt. And that was always a little bit of an uncomfortable situation as well. I don't know. There were certain things that, I never really had a big issue though. Like there were a couple farmers that I wasn't allowed to go to the farm without, like, a male present with me. And it wasn't for the fact of, like, my own safety. There were, like, actual conversations had with the salesperson that they did not want a young female on their farm without somebody, like, an older male present. Which, that was fine. At that point in time, like, whoever I was working for, they would just honestly tell us girls not to worry about it. Like, don't go there. We'll just have one of the sales guys go take care of it. So, I don't know. Those things, like, whenever I got put in those situations, they, like, made me uncomfortable. Honestly, the worst situations I ever ran into was when I worked at the feed mill at Milan Center, and you're in the heart of the Amish country. And so it was never the Englishmen that were the issue, but there were definitely some Amish guys that my name was Malibu Barbie is what everybody called me. I never saw myself as Malibu Barbie.
Oh, bullshit. Really?
Oh yeah, Jenny.
Oh, you Malibu Barbie? I mean,
Malibu
we
Barbie.
could come up with nicknames, but Malibu Barbie isn't one of them.
Malibu Barbie. I was the Milan Center Barbie doll. Like, you name it, they had it for me. I was the Barbie. And that was also when I was 16, 17, going to be 18 years old. And it was mainly coming from, like, I think somebody had made a joke about it, but then somehow it got turned into, the Amish started calling me that. And they did not know my name other than the Barbie doll. I don't know. There were some different, just different things that had been said, but again, Spitfire. I typically shut those down when they were said. After a while, it didn't get said anymore, but I don't know.
Well, that's interesting.
Yes.
Huh. That doesn't surprise me, but it does.
Yes. You never know. I think it's slowly becoming more, like, the more women that are coming into ag, it is becoming a little bit different. But I feel like that's always going to happen.
It's changing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree.
And I think back to when I was in college. So that would have been, I started in 89, and it was still, ag was still male dominated, but I never, maybe it's just because, maybe as I talked to Tara, maybe it's because I'm the transition generation. Mm-hmm. Because Sesame Street with black characters, interracial marriage was I was the last generation that's the first generation was acceptable. So some of this stuff is dying out because I guess we get used to it, and part of it's the way we were brought up. So I don't think I've ever looked down on anybody, especially recently, thinking, oh, Amber can't do it because she's a woman, or Shelby can't do it because she's a woman. It's like, if they don't do it, who the hell else is? Because the guys aren't here.
So the thing that kind of got me is I genuinely never had, like, when you look at the big picture of, like, all of the experiences I had, I honestly wouldn't bring it up at all, because it was so many small moments that you can't go and, like, hold everybody in the ag industry. I can't even hold a whole generation accountable for those moments I had, because they were so small and so minute that it's like, one bad apple is not going to ruin all of that for sure. But, it still happened, and I honestly believe 30 years from now, it's still going to happen, because there's still going to be that one person that you're going to run into that's going to make a comment he probably shouldn't say.
Well, in 30 years, Miss Me Jeans will be back.
Oh, that's how it works. Birkenstocks, apparently that used to be a thing when my mom was my age, so.
Ah, what's wrong with that?
I like them, no shame.
I hope they bring Rockies back, speaking of rear views.
Oh my goodness. I love it.
Yeah, that is an inappropriate comment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, the other thing that you have in common with us is horses.
Yes.
And it never came out because you never showed horses when we were around at the fair.
Nope. Horse girls have a very bad reputation, because I think that when you hear, oh, they show horses, it's not, like, when you hear, like, oh, somebody shows pigs, it's not, oh, they show pigs, but that's what you get when you hear, oh, they show horses. So I actually started showing horses when I was 10 years old. I absolutely fell in love with it. I did it all, like, you name it, I tried it. I taught myself how to, like, trick ride. I'm not even kidding. I was doing it on a Western saddle. Should not have been.
Oh, jeez. No.
I should have gotten hurt. Like, yeah. No, don't ask me how I did that. I taught myself how to ride side saddle. I jumped. I did Western, English, you name it. I did it. I had an absolute ball. At the tail end of, like, riding horses, I was actually getting a little bit into dressage, but that's not something you can just dip your toe in. That's
you got to jump in.
Yeah, you got to jump in on that one. And I started to realize that was a little too much for me. I started to pull back a little bit when I went to college, just because it takes a lot of time. When I was really, I want to say, quote unquote, in my prime of showing horses, I was riding 5 or 6 times a week. And it wasn't just like, I wasn't just riding one horse, I was riding multiple. I was very fortunate. Originally Ride with Faith, that's in Auburn, used to be out in Columbia City, and I had initially started there, and I had learned a lot from Pam. She taught me a lot about the horses. I brought a different atmosphere, but then people kind of came in and out of the barn and, kind of messed with that atmosphere a little bit. But I was just solely dedicated to enjoying the horses, helping work any of the horses she works. So at Ride with Faith, they work with emotionally, physically, and mentally disabled kids with horses. So I had the cool opportunity to not only help sometimes with those kids, but on the horse side of it, I would take care of the horses while the therapist was taking care of the kid. So I got to do a lot of that. I got to exercise a lot of the horses, because again, when those kids are working with them, they're not doing the right kind of exercises. They're walking them around.
Oh, they're walking. Yeah.
So
he needs to feel his oats a little bit. Let's get him. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a side of me that not a lot of people know how in depth I enjoyed, because I kind of hid it. It was kind of my reserve, like my little sanctuary that I kept to myself. One of my favorite things was coming up with an exercise plan for a horse to get them absolutely ripped by the end of the summer.
Oh, cool.
Like, I enjoyed that more than anything. I remember being 13, 14 years old. My mom worked probably 2 miles down the road from the horse barn, so she'd drop me off at 7 o'clock in the morning. She'd pick me up at the end of the night, and so how I kind of helped with the board of my horses and like paid for my lessons was I cleaned stalls, I cleaned the barn, I exercised horses. That's how I earned my lessons. Like, I don't want to say it was like, you can't go and pay a kid when they're 13 years old to do those things.
It's just an old barter. It's okay.
It's the old-fashioned horse trading, essentially. So, I did that, and that was one of my absolute joys. And then when I was almost 15, my first horse I had ended up getting lymphosarcoma, and he was a dark bay quarter horse, and he was a tank of a dude. And if you know anything about horses or know the size of horses, you'll know that a 1,500-pound quarter horse.
That's a big quarter horse.
You would typically think that's a fat quarter horse. He came in. It was so bad that when we took him down to Purdue to get tested for everything, they told us that like, hey, everything's spread throughout his whole body. The best thing to do is put him down. The vet came and asked us. He's like, hey, we thought he had Cushing's. He didn't have Cushing's disease. Let's test and see like what his BMI is. Just because he is such a big horse and with how much hair, they couldn't see his muscle structure very well. And it was in the middle of February. They went and tested him, and they were absolutely shocked. They ran the test twice to just check what everything was. But I mean, he was just a tank of a dude, and I will say he was like my first love, and I learned everything on that horse and did it all with him. And when I put him down, I kind of almost lost a little piece of my love for the horses then, just because it was difficult. I had another one. He was a half Arab named Rowdy, and he lived up to his name, that was for sure. But I don't know. He was my last horse I had, and I've slowly gotten out of it just because life kind of gets the best of you. And
right. You either have a horse as a boyfriend or Jackson as a boyfriend.
Yes, and I will say I do like Jackson. I plan on keeping him around for a little while.
Oh, we hope so too. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned horses because my last guest, Tracy Snyder, grew up on racing quarter horses.
Wow.
And she described the horses that she rode or exposed to working on the ranch as snorty.
Okay.
Which makes sense with quarter horse, getting a little snorty, getting his head up. Yeah.
I didn't quite have that, I will say. His name was Twister, and he was a heck of a dude, let me tell you. I mean, for any horse to let a 13-year-old try the Hippodrol on them and fall flat on their neck time and time again, and he would stop, let me get back up, and then he'd literally just go off again. Like, I know we're going to do it anyways, let's keep going.
So he trained you more than you trained him?
100%. He was my safety net.
So you got to use that experience with Jackson?
Yes. Yes.
Wow. Now that you're not an ag, but you're using lessons you learned from ag, are you looking forward to growing your career at Howard Bailey?
I am. Howard Bailey, when you look at like what you wish your job would be and the support you wish you had at your job, it would literally be my experience at Howard Bailey Financial. It's been really neat with the fact that I have been able to use a lot of my different opportunities and experiences in 4-H and FFA. One of which they do different seminars at Howard Bailey. They'll host a seminar at like Ruth Chris where we talk about what Howard Bailey is to kind of help find new potential clients. And there was different intros where somebody from the company would go in and introduce the advisor, and it was just like a quick little 3-minute speech. So they gave me this speech, and they're like, just memorize it word for word. You'll be good there. Go in and do it. And I'm like,
oh God, you read it and going,
I kind of looked
Really?
at it, and I was kind of looking back at like my extemp speaking, in FFA, and I'm like, can I just take these points and make it work? And they're like, I mean, as long as you get the idea off, you're good. Well, I had actually been stopped in the kitchen at work about a week later. I didn't realize they recorded my seminar.
Uh-oh.
And the CEO of the company stopped and he goes, hey, don't ever do that again. I'm like, excuse me? Like, I kind of cocked a little attitude. I'm like, excuse me? And he's like, no. What you did was great. We're switching the script up now. He goes, once I realized, like, what the script was and watching you do it, he's like, every time I've watched it before, I kind of had an issue with, like, who may have been doing it, or, like, he's like, you stand up there, and he's like, you just demand a room, and he's like, you could just talk forever. I'm like, oh. That's part of my personality, but also, like, I learned a lot through 4-H and FFA. I held a lot of different officer roles between the two organizations, and for me to stand up in front of 300-400 people was nothing. Never bothered me.
Yeah, so I've seen it, yeah.
When I stood up in front of 10 people at that seminar, I think it was 10 or 15, small potatoes.
Big deal.
Yeah.
Whatever. I do this in my sleep, yes. Amber said.
So they've given me different opportunities and paved a couple different roads I think I could pick and choose from, but I don't know, where I'm at, I've learned that through, like, 4-H and FFA, I never said no. Every opportunity that was in front of me, I took it and I ran with it. And I quickly found out that sometimes doing that wasn't the best option. Sometimes you could take it, but take a walk with it. Get a mentor and take a walk with it instead. So I've slowly been trying to take that approach because I have been 100-mile-an-hour my whole life. I get it honest from my dad. So I'm trying to, like, almost slow down and, like, okay, hey, this is a really cool opportunity. It's not going anywhere right now. Let's take a second and learn about this and try to understand everything before I move on to the next step. Okay.
That is, we're getting obscure territory here, Amber. Boy. And it only took us 39 minutes and 36 seconds. Okay. You bring up a point that I think is really important that I've hit on for quite a while in my writings is mentorship.
Yes.
You've had 3 professional jobs post-graduation. How has your mentorship been in those 3 positions as a mentee?
I'm
not asking you to call people out, just in general.
So I will say my first position, I lost my job and it was solely to my own, like, it was completely myself. I had all the mentors available in front of me, but I was way too up there in the air to ask for help.
Okay, what do you mean by up there in the air?
Like, I thought I knew what I was doing. I came out of college and I got my bachelor's degree in 3 years and I knew what I was doing and I had these resources in front of me and I was going to figure it out myself. And I quickly realized that sometimes talking to somebody that's a couple years older than you and has been down around the block a couple times is the best way to go about it. So I was quickly humbled by that approach. That approach has no longer been a part of my life. I have so many people in my life that even if it's something as simple as gardening, I'm going to ask somebody for help before I attempt it myself. So,
and then forget to tell Jackson to plant.
Yes. Like, how many times have I called your wife to talk to her about asparagus because I'm scared I'm going to kill my asparagus? So I have quickly learned that I feel like everybody has a mentor in front of them, but whether they use them or not makes the difference. Because I truly believe everybody has a mentor. It's just you probably don't use them the way you're supposed to. So I have learned that in all the different aspects of my life, I want to have a mentor in my professional life, which I do. I have a couple different people at Howard Bailey, that one of which is the advisor that I work underneath. He is absolutely amazing, and he is like the most go, down to the grind person I know. But when I walk up to him, I call it my walk of shame. So I walk up to him because I have attempted to understand whatever it might be, and I've looked in every possible scenario, but whereas the old Amber would have just kept plowing through and not asked for help, okay, I've looked at these 5 things, I just still don't understand this, I'm going to go to him and talk to him. And he knows that when I go to him, he's going to stop everything he's doing, no matter how busy he is, and he'll sit down and teach me. And he'll walk me through it until I understand it. And that kind of relationship I have with him has been really neat because I'd never thought I had that opportunity before, but it's like, really? I did. It's just I let my ego get in the way, and I didn't want to ask for help.
Yeah.
So I have done that on a professional setting. I now have people, we go to County Line Church in Auburn, And Jackson and I have been involved in a marriage like premarital counseling. And we've actually been partnered with a couple that it's quite funny. The husband is identical to Jackson and the wife talks just as much as I do and like is just like me. So we now have those mentors not only spiritually but like through marriage.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody should have a mentor or like a mentor couple outside of their family and friends that can help them with their marriage. And so Jackson and I have tried to find that. I don't know if you necessarily even want to call it a mentor, but like sitting down with a therapist to go through your own mental and emotional struggles. And being able to identify mentors in every different aspect of my life, I think has completely changed me. And I know that people around me have noticed a difference, the way I carry myself, the way that I no longer just spit off the tip of my tongue about whatever it might be. But yeah, I am literally like the biggest supporter of mentors out there. But I've also fallen to rock bottom by not using my mentors and realizing sometimes if you just ask for help, you actually do grow whenever you ask for help. It doesn't make you weak.
It's a really mature position to have as a 25-year-old.
Yeah. I will say the one thing is, and I love my dad more than the next person, but my dad grew up with a very tough love mindset. Very.
Well, he had tough parents and tough brothers.
I mean, he was 1 of 9, so he had to have that tough love. And my dad did instill that in me, but the same thing with the tough love, I never let I don't want to say that's the soft side, because when you call it your soft side and ask for help or ask for a mentor, it makes you sound weak, and I think the strongest people ask for help.
Yeah.
That's how that's how people are successful. That's a hard word to say sometimes.
Okay.
But that's just how it works, and I finally had to break that mold and ask for help and realize that this is what I have to do for me. And I have seen growth in every aspect of my life that I have tried to get a mentor.
Mentorship. You're not the first person to talk about it. We talked about it. My friend Casey Bradley, Dr. Casey Bradley, she lives in Arkansas. She works on mentorship. We're working on mentorship. And I think you bring up a good point in our discussions that we either view mentorship as too structured. Oh, you have to sit down with your mentor and talk with them every Thursday at 4 o'clock, or we turn it into a weakness. When you went to college, why don't you understand this? As you brought up, you get a little bit of arrogance in there. You get a little bit of embarrassment because, hey, I've got a Ph.D. Why should I go ask somebody a question about swine nutrition? I just got my Ph.D. Well, I didn't know shit.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful that we're bringing up mentorship and talking about it.
Yeah.
So what was it about you? Was it being fired that you finally had a little bit of humility?
That was the most, I can tell you to the moment that I knew it was going to happen. I was texted at 11:32 that morning. It was Tuesday morning before Thanksgiving in 2022. As soon as I got the text, I called my mom and I said, Mom, I'm going to get fired at 1:30 today. I knew it. And the humbling part to me was not getting fired. It was at the end of that conversation, I was sitting in a room with people that I actually looked up to. And I was not mad. I had no anger. None at all. I straight up looked at both those people that were sitting in that room with me, and I apologized. I apologized because what had happened was I had a seed sales goal that was in front of me, and I did not meet that goal. And I should have asked for more help to understand the seed that I was selling. I should have asked for more help for somebody to follow along with me, watch what I was doing in my sales process to figure out what I was doing wrong. And I didn't do anything. I didn't ask for help. I was so convinced I could do it on my own just because I could talk. That's not how that works. So at the end of that conversation when they fired me, I looked at both of them and I apologized for letting them down because I looked up to them. And when I got in my car, I went to the office, grabbed my stuff, I got in my car, and I instantly called my grandpa. I called my grandpa and I told him the whole conversation that was had, told him that I lost my job. And the kicker about it too is, and you probably feel this when you lost your job, when you get fired, everybody thinks you did something morally wrong. Like, they think that you were, like, stealing money. They think you were, whatever it may have been. And it's like, no, I just simply didn't, achieve my goals. And I failed myself and I failed their team, and they had every right to do what they did. So that was the most humbling experience to me. And from that moment, I actually, my grandpa and I, we got really close before that, just talking about, seed. But I got really close with him afterwards because he I didn't realize that my grandpa had been fired twice from selling seed. And then he landed in Broadbeck, and Broadbeck was where he was meant to be.
Okay.
Like, he just thrived there. And so my grandpa became my mentor, which is so funny. He is probably, he's one of my favorite people on this whole planet. But my grandpa, like, in tears, I never knew that he went through that experience of being fired, and he opened up, and him and I talked about it. My grandpa became my mentor of being fired. He explained to me that, like, one, I was already a step ahead because I realized this was a humbling experience. It wasn't going to completely tear me down, but I was going to get through it. I just needed to push through it and figure out my next stepping stone to go to. And so he did that, and still to this day, Grandpa and I, we talk about everything. He is the first person I call, and when I say first person, I will call him before I call Jackson. I will call him before I call my parents. He is the absolute first person I call on everything that happens, good, bad, or ugly. But he was, I mean, him being my mentor through that showed me that had I just asked for help beforehand, I probably wouldn't have went through there. Now, I do believe everything happens for a reason.
Oh, yes.
I do believe that I was meant to learn things from being there and at the Andersons, but I think my time was done, and I don't think I would have left there had that not been forced on me. So, that's where that kind of lays.
I wrote about it this week, the silver linings. The silver lining is you get a better relationship than you had with your grandfather, because now you have a better understanding of what he went through. Not aside from the terminations that you both went through, not with your work at selling seed and in agronomy, you have an idea what he did on the crop selling or crop insurance sales, and that you didn't have before.
I was somebody that before I got fired, like you know how they have like that BC and AD, like there's that point in history. My point in history.
Birth of Christ.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And my point in history is the day I got fired at 1:30. That is my point in time. There's before that Amber, and then there's after that Amber. Before that Amber, she wanted to be president of whatever organization it was, I was going to do it. I never said no. I did it. I ran at everything. And I had said this earlier. I would see a situation, I would run with it. After, November 22nd, 2022 at 1:30 p.m., Amber will now see an opportunity and realize, okay, is this one meant for me? Because not every opportunity is meant for every person. It's laid in front of you, but it doesn't mean you have to take it. There's always other options. Look at what's best for you, not what's best for your neighbor. Okay, this is an opportunity that's for me. Now, who can I have in my corner to help me through it? Who's going to be my soundboard whenever I have a tough day? Who is going to be my mentor to walk me through these different situations? So that is like my way of thinking, and it's something that I don't ever wish being like losing a job on anybody, but I am very grateful for that. Actually, so much so when I did my interview with Howard Bailey, the person that was doing the interview, he asked me my most proud moment of my life. And I said, it's November 22nd, 2022 at 1:30 when I got fired. And you want to talk about catching a CFO off guard. He looked at me, he's like, what?
Whiskey Tango Foxtrot?
Yeah. I was like, that is my most proud moment, because if you would have asked me 5 years ago how I would have reacted, I would have thought I would have been angry. I thought I would have been blaming somebody else. All of that. I said, I'm proud of myself for how humble I was and all the lessons I've been able to look at from then on and realize that I do have to move forward, that I have to figure this out. It's nobody else's fault but my own, but I think a lot of my generation would have blamed it on somebody else. So, I mean, a lot of people would. But I realized that I was at fault. I should have done more. I mean, I could have totally spun that narrative and said, well, they should have given me more opportunities to learn.
Oh, there's a lot of ways to dissect what happened.
But
it's mature of you to have ownership in your part of it. Those of us that see it from the outside think you're taking too much to blame yourself, but you're growing from it. That's the point. So, what are we going to call that? BT? AT?
I don't know.
AF? Before termination, after termination?
Yeah, I like that better than being fired. So we'll say BT. I was going to say BF before fired, AF after fired, but I like BT
BF,
and AF.
BT and AT. Okay. So Amber AT, 25 years old.
Yes.
would you have responded to the invitation to enroll in the Miss Allen County pageant differently, AT?
I don't know. Amber, Miss Allen County, that was, oh boy, that was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
When I did that, I genuinely don't know. Because that experience, this is what gets me too. I now help with like the Miss Allen County stuff. People think these girls go up there and it's a beauty pageant. These girls are going up there doing speeches. They're doing interviews.
Yeah, it's a lot more than.
Yeah, there's so much to it that this is my answer. Okay, I know my answer. Amber AT Amber would not be AT Amber if she wasn't Miss Allen County.
Okay.
Because
so it was a building experience.
Yes. That has genuinely put me in, that's made me who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be me if I wasn't Miss Allen County. Because whether it was going out and walking up to random strangers, doing those interviews, doing the speeches, walking across stage to build that confidence in myself, I mean, that put me to where I am.
Well, I think it molded what you had.
Yep.
You didn't learn confidence from being.
Me. I'll say sculpted, not molded, because I won't fit into a mold.
Okay. Sculpted. But I think AT makes you a better mentor for the girls that are young ladies that are going through the scholarship contest.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed it. There's a lot of girls that come up and talk to me and ask for help. Have learned that because I have realized that sometimes I come off with a little bit of excuse my French, a little bit of a bitchy persona, and I can kind of be hard to approach. If you don't know me, you sometimes think I'm hard to approach. I never realized that, but I think it's my overconfidence every once in a while that kind of gets me. But I have now been able to, soften my shells. I'm going to blame Ginger Bushing on that because she has taught me that sometimes you're a little blunt, you need to tone it down.
Which is funny coming from Ginger.
Yes, 100%. But she has taught me sometimes I need to soften my edges a little bit. And I have done that. And I have some of the sweetest, most soft-spoken girls come up to me. One of which, I don't know if you know her, but her name's Stephanie Onion.
No, Stephanie.
Yes.
Huh?
She got on the court this year. 2 years ago, she was doing the pageant with Zoe. And was so shy, wouldn't hardly come up to me. I had to I had to go up to her and
probably scared the crap out of her.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. She now comes up to me. Her mom, and her dad will come up and talk to me anytime they see me in public.
That's so cool.
And watching her get crowned, I'm going to say I'm proud of McKenna Malcolm, but she had it and she was doing great. But watching Stephanie go up there and knowing that I had talked to her and I was boosting her confidence to do it again. Stephanie, you got to do it. This is what we need to work on. And being so transparent and honest with her, it made me feel better about myself because I was able to talk about some of, she's like, well, you're just so confident. You can just do it. It's just because I look confident doesn't mean I am confident all the time. So it's been cool to kind of work with some of those girls that most people wouldn't even assume should be, that would want to do a pageant. I've been able to work with her and, it's not about walking up there on stage. Actually, what will win you that whole entire pageant is the interview itself.
Yeah, that happens 2 days before everybody sees you on stage.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's been cool to, really work with those girls and just, even if it's just developing their standing on stage and talking in front of people or sitting down and giving them pointers on an interview. I've had a blast with it. If you ask me anything I do now, whether that's helping with 4-H and being on the 4-H board or my job or whatever it might be, one of my favorite things is working with those Miss Allen County contestants. Because those girls are some go-getters. It takes a lot of confidence to get up on that stage.
Your experience that you shared with Stephanie and knowing her from my niece Zoe, BT Amber would not have molded her the way AT Amber molded her.
I think AT Amber has that humbling side to her that I know it's not, for me, it might be easy for me to go up on stage and talk. I've never really had an issue with that. Some people aren't like that. And AT Amber realizes that some people aren't like that, and I try to be more humble with the way of, not everybody can get up there and talk as easy as I can. And most people don't realize that sometimes sitting one-on-one like this actually scares me crapless. Where I can talk in front of 500 people, but sometimes one-on-one scares me a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
I've caught you tripping on a couple of questions I've asked you.
yes.
Okay. So what is your one or two favorite memories of our time together in Fairfolk?
Oh, man. Fairfolk, that is like a legendary time. One of my favorite all-time moments was actually when I was crowned Miss Allen County, and being crowned Miss Allen County was great because I had one of the biggest groups of people cheering my name. But at the end, so everybody wants to be there to watch you compete because they want to see if you're gonna be crowned Miss Allen County. And I was crowned Miss Allen County. So yeah, you expect everybody to be there then. But I don't know if you remember this, but when I was passing on my crown, everybody was still there. All of Fairfolk was there.
Yeah.
The day I passed my crown on, everybody was there. When I did my farewell
2 years
speech.
later.
Yes, 2 years later, thanks to COVID. Everybody was there. Nobody needed to be there for that because I already won.
Yeah.
And none of our Fairfolk kids were in there to compete. So there was no reason for anybody to be there. I still had close to 40 people sitting there cheering my name.
Yeah.
And I remember I had thanked everybody time and time again for that. And in my speech, I had made a specific comment. I said, you guys did not need to be at all of my events cheering me on, especially all of the dads. They don't want to sit in a pageant on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
And I pointed you guys out because why in the world would I think that you and Jamie and Troy and Danny Bushing would want to be sitting there watching me, not watching me compete or any of us girls, but just there for my 2-minute speech. Like,
that's what we do.
The kind of love that we have and support we have, even though we've all kind of slowly grown and gone our separate ways just a little bit, because that's just how life works. It is still really cool how there is still that kind of support. And then also to tie in that one was I had made my little speech about, or my question for my on stage from Miss Allen County was, if your house is burning down, what 3 things would you grab and why? One of my things was I would grab a bag of marshmallows because if I was stressed, my show pigs would be too, and I gotta calm us all down. The fact that everybody got security outfits, all of Fairfolk did.
Oh, yeah?
And chased me around, and like that kind of support, it's just the support behind Fairfolk itself, whether it was me with Miss Allen County or the DeBolts with their, going to different sporting events, or it was all of us showing up for grad parties, whatever it was, the kind of support we all had is something that I will eternally be grateful for because it has proven to me that family isn't always boring.
No.
And you guys are always there when I need you. And let's say in the instance of this week with what happened with my dog, Kimmy, she didn't need to go in on her day off, but she dropped everything she was doing to be there for me because that's Fairfolk was family. Yep. And that's what it's about.
There you go.
Yeah. I hope everybody gets a Fairfolk.
I do too.
I hope they won't have our Fairfolk, but I hope they get their own Fairfolk.
Their own Fairfolk. That's right.
They don't need to take mine.
This Fairfolk, the memories will be long and it won't be replicated. So.
I mean, we went through a lot, whether it was family deaths, whether it was death of animals, whether it was, it was everything. Yeah. I went through one of my hardest breakups with Fairfolk by my side.
Oh, yeah. And funny thing about, you bring that up. Yep. We Fairfolk dads are sitting here going, she's got to learn on her own.
Yes. Yeah. And you guys did that. And it was I think everybody in Fairfolk brought their own life lesson. Even somebody as young as Zoe brought her own lesson to teach everybody.
Oh, yes.
And so it's a really neat experience. And I think even looking at the Allen County Fairgrounds now, you can kind of see different families coming together the way that we did. I mean, when we came together, I've known Bushings my whole entire life. We've known DeBolts for a while, but we didn't know you guys. Yeah. I mean, we didn't know everybody. Like, it wasn't like we all grew up from infants together. We came together because of that fairgrounds. And if anybody ever needs a testimony as why you need to be in the agriculture industry or 4-H, I will flat out say Fairfolk. Like, if I am grateful for one thing for my 4-H career, it is all of you guys.
Well, and that all started in campsite number 21 and 22 when I had a beer and Jamie looked out the window of his camper and saw me having a beer. I was like, oh, it's okay to have a beer? And it exploded from there. Yep. Yeah, you guys, it's long to be remembered,
Yeah.
never to be replicated.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful place for us to quit.
Yeah.
And since you alluded to, I won't call it cheating, but preparing for the 5 questions, I want to see if there's any commonality with all the other questions that we've asked.
Okay.
Because I'm hoping Jackson is watching those lamb chops because I think I'm getting hungry.
Oh, me too.
Amber, 5 questions. What is one lesson from agriculture that you take with you every day?
The one lesson I would learn from agriculture, I've talked about it a lot tonight, is stereotypes. So there are you hear the common phrase of like one bad apple will ruin the whole bushel.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not realize that we all know stereotypes in the world, this, that, and the other. But I didn't realize that like I don't want to say there's one bad farmer, but one bad act of a person that's in agriculture can ruin everybody outside of agriculture's reputation, like what they think of agriculture. And I didn't realize that until I had to take a step back from agriculture in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I will hear something said about, whether they're talking about going and getting a half a steer and, grass-fed versus grain-fed, and, oh, you have to get grass-fed because those are the only ones that aren't ever given medications, and they go and they harvest steers with medication in them if they have grain. And it's like, the amount of times that I have heard that, and literally, like, I got better things to do than stop and have this conversation, but I'm going to stop and have this conversation.
Hold on. A.T.
Yes.
A.T. Amber.
Yeah. I can still pull back a little bit of that BT Amber and be like, whoa, hold on. So I have like learned that stereotypes are a thing,
mm-hmm.
and that it's applied in every aspect of your life. There's always going to be stereotypes, but sometimes it's not wrong to correct those stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
That means you're teaching somebody something.
So question number 2, if you could have coffee with any historical figure in agriculture, who would it be?
Oh, it would be my grandpa. I have talked about him enough today. Something that Micah Malcolm had said, he's like, we don't get to sit and have coffee with our grandpas when they're in their prime.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could do that. When he said that, damn, that's good. Because what I would do is sit and have coffee and rice pancakes. My grandpa makes some killer rice pancakes. Just so whether it's talking about agriculture or life, I wish I could, which I do quite frequently, but it would be my grandpa.
But it's fair to go back to talk to your grandpa when he was in his prime.
Oh, I wish I could.
Yeah.
I wish I knew before my grandpa lost his job. Like, I wish I could talk to, BT grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I wish I could. Because right now, I got the AT grandpa. I wish I could talk to BT grandpa.
And the wise grandpa.
Yes.
I've experienced 80 years or 70 years of my life. I'm wise. So it's different than the BT grandpa would have been when it was go, 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 and I'm going to whatever.
Yeah. I wish I could talk to my grandpa before he lost his jobs to see if he was as arrogant as I was. I don't think he would have been. But just to see the way that he's watched me go from before and after, I wish I could have watched him to go before and after to see, am I handling it the way that this champ of a man is handling himself? Yeah.
And as Mike and I talked, that is a cruelty of grandparents and grandchildren, is that we don't get to enjoy them at their prime. It's a great one. So number 3, what is one underappreciated or quirky thing about ag that more people should know?
How small the industry is. You don't realize, you know that ag is a small industry, but we always think, oh, it's a small world in Northeast India.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, that's actually a small world in, the Midwest.
Yeah.
You don't realize that somehow everybody is connected.
Mm-hmm.
So much so, I'll never forget, my college roommate, her husband, that lives out in Western Illinois, was delivering equipment to Danny Bushett. It's that small of a world.
Yep.
Or even, some people that I met that lived way down in Putnam County. There was one day I ran into him, and we kind of, looked at each other. I was like, I feel like I know you from somewhere. And they're like, were you in 4-H? I'm like, yeah, I show pigs. And they're like, well, what kind of pigs? I was like, Spots were my favorite. He's like, I've been pinned next to you so many times. And I'm like, it's just how small the world is.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not about what you know, but who you know.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you need to have that who you know person in your back pocket to figure out what you don't know.
A fun little exercise is go to your Facebook page, click on friends, and it has those suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
and you look at it and said 10 mutual friends, 20 mutual friends, or whatever, and click on it and see who your mutual friends are, and you're going, oh my gosh, they're from Tacoma, Nebraska. How do I know? Oh, because of this and that. It is really small. And was it Kevin Bacon? It's 7 degrees of separation.
5 degrees.
Is it 5?
5 degrees of separation.
I think ag is 3.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And I wish more people would stop and look at somebody that they think they know and introduce yourself, because the 5 degrees of separation, figure it out, because sometimes it makes the world just feel a little bit safer.
Yeah, that's true. So number 4, what is your favorite ag-related tool, product, or innovation?
100%, unfortunately, to say the internet. And the reason I'm going to say this is the majority of people that are haters and create the negative stereotypes about the ag industry are the ones that are behind their screens. And they don't step outside of it. They don't try to understand it and learn it. And so sometimes the only way for them to actually sit down with an ag person and learn is through their phones, whether that's TikTok, YouTube, podcasts, whatever it might be. There was a dairy farmer, and I looked at your questions, and I was trying to figure out who this guy was, and I couldn't find his TikTok. But every Monday, he would break a myth, a dairy farm myth. And he would say the myth, and then he would prove to you why it's not true. And I cannot remember who this
is. Is that the one from Maryland that made the creamery? That had a red cow?
Yes.
Yeah, he stepped back from TikTok. I follow him. I forget it. I'll find it for you. Yes.
But the things that he taught, and it was so cool because you'd go in the comments and people would be asking questions about that myth, and he'd answer them, or he'd make another video on it. And those kind of people are so cool and so important. Like Jackson from South Whitley. That little boy Jackson that talks about John Deere tractors. People all over my workplace know of him, but they don't realize that he's just in South Whitley. They don't realize how close he is. But they have learned to talk about the farm equipment because of this little 8-year-old. 8 or 9.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Jackson, his video today was a 70-year-old disc harrow.
Yep.
And he was featured at the Fort Wayne Farm Show and the Louisville Farm Show on the brand new John Deere that's 800 horsepower or whatever. So he gets exposed people to a wide range of ag that you and I see, and we just kind of take for granted.
And I've had people at my work that follow him, and they'll come up to me and go, Amber, do you know how different the technology's changed in ag? And so I'll play dumb, and I'll let them talk to me about it.
Which is perfect.
Yes. Yeah. Because then you literally get to see that something as small as a TikTok video is in making people intrigued in farming. And it's literally it gives you chills, and it is so cool. And this poor kid, he has no idea that he's making this kind of impact. He has no clue.
Well, I think he does now because he's putting up his own barn and buying a tractor. Yeah,
I think he knows how many people see it, but I don't think he understands how he's making
he's too
people
young.
think.
He's too young.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that he's not smart enough. It'll sink in. He'll have his AT moment.
Yes.
Where he'll be like, oh my gosh, I did this. So, and that's a great point. And the way that you approach it of playing dumb, it's a sales tool.
Yep.
That's all you're doing is you just let the people speak. And you ask the questions, you let them answer. So then and you put you in a position where you're not the arrogant know-it-all preaching to them. They tell you where they are. And then
that's the AT.
That's the AT. Good job. And the last question, Amber. What is one small change that could make a huge impact in ag's future?
So they teach you, when you're in college, FFA, all of it, they teach you an elevator speech. You need to have an elevator speech. 30 seconds to talk about something. So, I was told this, Miss Raker, man, she was a heck of an ag teacher. And she always made us have an elevator speech, and it didn't always have to be about yourself. Sometimes it was about agriculture.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was about getting to know somebody else, not about you. So we would go and she always made us have some sort of speech that if somebody asked us what FFA was, we could talk about it, but then ask them what you learned about it, what you learned about it, ag or whatever. And so sometimes I think if everybody were to have just a small elevator speech when you're standing in line in Starbucks, you're standing in line waiting to be seated at a nice restaurant, you sit and look at the person next to you. Instead of getting your phone out, talk to the person next to you. Try to figure out those 5 connections you might have with that person, or try to figure out what they're interested in. Do they have any questions about ag? Because saying something as simple as, whatever your career might be in agriculture might spark a question in them, and then all of a sudden you just opened up this French door of an opportunity to talk about agriculture.
That is cool. Not so much having the elevator speech, but being open to
just starting a
without
conversation.
preaching. Yes.
So sometimes when you think about it, the elevator speech, it's not about necessarily selling yourself all the time, but sometimes it's an opportunity to be an icebreaker to open up to something else.
Oh, yeah.
You got to sometimes start with an elevator speech to open up to a conversation.
Definitely. It's 5 great answers, Amber.
Thank you.
And I will say, internet is in different forms, has been said many times.
Yep.
Whether it's access to information or sharing information. I like your nuanced approach to it of offering opportunities for others to learn. You have answered differently than I expected. That is awesome.
Fun.
Well, thank you for coming to the Annex Patio and spending time with me. I think we've got some ideas for how we can expand on what we're doing to help other people. I look forward to watching you grow, and I can't wait to see your wedding in a few months.
I know, I'm excited.
I'm excited. So to my audience, here is just another conversation we had digging into somebody's ag roots to see how those experiences formed them, made them resilience, and helped them become the people they are today. I appreciate any of the likes, follows, and questions, and look forward to sharing more stories and people's obscure backgrounds.